Good afternoon.
We're live now
Thank
to
you for
Hong Kong, where
invitation.
Hong Kong's former Chief Executive CY
When I was
Leung
a
is
student
speaking at the Foreign
in England,
Correspondents
I
Club. He's
came
an outspoken
across
figure, so let's listen in.
This book, Key Treaties for the Great Powers, 1814 to 1914. It was a catalogue of extraordinary humiliation for China. As a school student in Hong Kong, I had learned about some of these treaties, but had never read the full text. So I decided to own them, spending about 6 hours worth of wages as a part-time helper in a Chinese fish and chip shop. The owner of the shop, a Mr. Li, was from Zhongshan of Guangdong province. The Chinese people like to ask each other not their place of origin, but where their origin was. In Cantonese, 鄉下喺邊度? And in 普通話, 老家在哪裡? In Cantonese, 鄉下喺邊度? In 普通話, 老家在哪裡? For me, 老家 was Weihai Wei in Shandong, a small town built around a naval base in the Qing dynasty near the tip of the Shandong Peninsula. My parents came to Hong Kong from Weihai Wei when they were teenagers. My father to work in the Hong Kong police. We lived in police marriage quarters. 5 doors away from our cubicle was another Shandong policeman working for the special branch. Weihai Wei was featured in 2 treaties in the book. The Treaty of Shimonoseki with Japan in 1895, under which Japan was allowed temporary occupation as a guarantee of faithful performance of the stipulations of this act, which included a war indemnity of 200 million Kuping taels. And the second, the convention between Great Britain and China respecting Weihai Wei, which was signed on the 1st of July 1898, the very day when the lease over the new territories of Hong Kong commenced. The British have been busy. The Qing dynasty ended in 1911, soon after these treaties. My father was born in that year. Nationalist rule lasted only 38 years, not long after the Japanese invasion. My mother, for whom I have great admiration, was born after the end of the Qing dynasty. But the old custom of binding the feet of young girls had persisted. The nationalist government sent inspectors to try to stop this cruel practice. They were chased away by the locals. The majority of the people were in favor still of this old custom. And so, my mother had her feet bound 15 years after the end of the Qing dynasty. And the majority were wrong, very wrong. And the People's Republic was founded in 1949, the year when my elder sister was born. As for me, I was born in 1954, which in the traditional 60-year cycle was a year of Jiawu. The previous Jiawu being 1894, widely known for the war with Japan, as a result of which China signed or made to sign the Treaty of Shimonoseki and lost Taiwan. My family was typical, every member owning a personal piece of Chinese history. Our generation did not need to be told what to do being Chinese. History is a line and not scattered dots. I'm giving you a rather long but only a small part of China's modern history for 2 purposes. First, to set a background leading to the founding of the People's Republic 70 years ago. And secondly, to remind all of us the historical context in which China and its people lived the past and how they view the future. We want to be able to focus on the advancement of the country. We do not need reprisals. But this question often comes to mind. What if the treaties in my book had never forced their ways into Chinese history. The early years of the People's Republic were not easy. Shenzhen was the first place on the mainland that I visited. It was 1977, 28 years into the People's Republic, also the year before the reforms were launched. The population was probably 20,000, with no motor vehicles. Now Shenzhen, as you know, is a city on the mainland that has the highest GDP per capita. I brought a loaf of bread from Hong Kong with me for lunch because I did not have food coupons. For many years since 1978, I went there again to teach when I was given food coupons. In 1979, I took a long and slow train ride from Beijing to Shanxi. The scenes outside the windows were unflatteringly grey, barren, and depressing. It might just be my imagination, but I thought I saw the scars of war and political turmoil. Nationwide reforms were launched in 1978, 29 years after the founding of the People's Republic. So the past 70 years are made up of 29 years of planned economy and 41 years of market economy. Many in the middle-aged generation in China now have no personal experience of the planned economy and the food coupons. By now, there have been too many reforms to recount. To me, in 1988, land and housing reforms were the most exciting. China now has the largest real estate market in the world, which has attracted most or much outside investments and all the major foreign professional consultancies. Land sales have become a major source of government revenue, and real estate a major asset for private individuals, families, and corporates. Often, we overlook the fact that it only took China a short span of 31 years for all these to happen. When I started working as a pro bono advisor to the Shanghai government in the 1980s and helped draft the first land sale document of the People's Republic in 1988, no one expected this new reform initiative to take hold and spread as quickly as it has. I brought with me this book, which is a record of the efforts leading to the sale of the first piece of land in March 1988 by tender, and I had handed it. So I thought you might be interested as a journalist, and I leave behind a copy, Jodie, if I may. You mentioned to me the fact that you give me a gift at the end. I'll exchange this with you. The housing reform that was started in the same year, again it was 1988, was equally impactful and far-reaching. The mainland now has a higher owner occupation rate than Hong Kong's. Housing space per head is twice that in Hong Kong. How could one reconcile these with the socialist doctrine of state land ownership? The answer is, I suppose, we did it in a typically Chinese pragmatic way. With handsome land revenue from land sales, local governments have been able to rebuild cities and the countryside. Weihai, which my parents were told to leave when they were teenagers for Hong Kong, because there was not enough food on the table, is now a very livable seaside city. I proudly invite you to visit this Laojia of mine. Or perhaps Country Life could start a Weihai edition. Achievements in the past 70 years are plentiful. I shall not use the well-known GDP growth figures. Let us look at the people-to-people interactions. The country is now much more open, both ways. In 2018, 71 million, or 5% of the mainland Chinese population, visited foreign countries. And this is not counting those coming to Hong Kong, going to Macau and Taiwan. So 5% of the mainland Chinese population last year visited foreign countries. In the same year, 662,000 mainland Chinese students were studying overseas. 662,000. The meaning of these figures is, of course, much more than bringing revenue to the tourism and education sectors. And then by way of humanitarian aid, since 1963, 280 million patients in 71 countries have been treated by Chinese medical teams. On the political side, there are also plenty of notable achievements, the latest being the decisions of the fourth plenary session of the 19th Central Committee of the Communist Party in October, 四中全会. In the previous month, the first Central Conference in the 70-year history of the CPPCC was held. President Xi emphasized the role of the CPPCC, I quote, as a major political and organizational body for implementing the new model of political party system. And who says there's no reform in the political system in China? As a major political and organizational body for implementing the new model of political party system. These major political events have been underreported by the Western media, partly, I suppose, because of the absence of English text. And anyway, they are extremely difficult, believe me, to translate. In the past few years, the CPPCC has been reviewing its role in the Chinese political system, and this is how I see it. China has a multi-party system, non-adversarial and not plebiscitary. The CPPCC is the dedicated body for consensus building. 60% of the members of the National Committee are not Communist Party members. Regularly, group meetings are held to discuss in-depth topical issues such as the environment, the shared economy, healthcare, and poverty elimination. The meetings are attended by members, outside experts, stakeholders, and high-ranking officials. There is no grandstanding, no filibustering, or heated arguments. Not dramatic to watch, but it achieves the objective of finding solutions that are acceptable to most to move forward. The future of China and the visions covering the full range of subjects from deepening reforms and opening up, poverty elimination, scientific and technological developments, to the respective roles of the state-owned and private enterprises have been well discussed internally within the Communist Party, the CPPCC, and the populists. China watchers in the West have a lot of catching up to do. I have my own wish list. I wish we could facilitate more young people from other countries to experience China, for them to form their own views. Achievement is one thing. Being recognized by the international community to have achieved is another. Throughout the past 70 years, China has been at the receiving end of numerous uninvited and mostly unwarranted criticisms from the West on issues that do not touch on bilateral relationships. Some of these have become China bashing. These commentators believe that they are better and know enough about China and its past. Please don't take offense. As someone who knows a tiny bit about the West, after all these years, it is still beyond me as to why people in the West make it a habit of opening their mouths about other countries as if they have done better dealing with their own domestic problems. Hong Kong has been an easy proxy and a soft target of China. It has been drafted by the West to join the ranks of Xinjiang and Tibet. China has been constantly told what democracy, the freedoms, and human rights should mean under the principle of one country, two systems. Somehow these commentators never bothered other places in Asia about the same democracy, human rights, and freedom issues with the same yardsticks. Would this be because these other places are not part of China. At exactly midpoint in the 70-year history of the People's Republic, namely 1984, China and the United Kingdom signed a joint declaration on the question of Hong Kong.
So that is CY Leung, Hong Kong's third chief executive, serving until 2017, speaking out about Hong Kong, China. He's an outspoken figure, often been very critical of the protests there. Of course, he's speaking to the Foreign Correspondents Club on a very busy news day for Hong Kong as U.S. President Donald Trump signs into law several bills supporting the protesters. We'll keep an eye on that speech and bring you more later today.